Hey Rockstars, welcome to the Retail Leasing Playbook podcast, where we go through chapter by chapter of my latest book so I can give you the highlights. Would love for you to buy and read the book as well, or keep it on your desk for reminders, but this is the next best thing. Today we're going to go over chapter 37 and 38. 37, make sure you have an agreement before you move on. I am not a believer of showing space to people that I don't think matches their needs. I think it's crucially important to qualify specifically sign calls, people that have driven by or found your property online, asking a ton of questions to qualify them over the phone before I go and show space. So this chapter talks about that. It talks about continuing to do your best at qualifying, covering the rental rates, covering the fact that the property has maybe small signage, maybe it's in the elbow, maybe there's a parking issue, maybe they're looking for an anchor and there's no anchor, maybe the traffic is low, maybe the visibility is poor. Making sure that prior to showing up on site, you've asked them a ton of questions, and then you've been able to respond, and you know that your property is a potential match. I rarely show space to someone that I don't think is a potential match. For example, I have people sometimes call about my center in the Sawgrass Mills Mall area. I have a small center. It's on one of the out parcels of the mall. And people seem to think that because I'm on the out parcel of the mall, prospects think that I have visibility and exposure and a ton of traffic, which I don't. Because when the developer built the shopping center, he built 4 out parcels and it blocks all of my visibility to my center. So if the person has not driven by the site, they have a false impression of what they're going to find. So if it's, for example, a yogurt store or an ice cream store, which I believe is an impulse use and needs a ton of traffic, I really try to dissuade them on the phone and not go all the way out to the property and meet them, because as we've spoken before, time is our commodity. And for me to leave my office, go to the space, wait for them to show up, and in the first 5 minutes, they're going to take a look and say, there's no traffic, there's no activity, there's no traffic, there's no anchor. Why am I here? We should be able to cover that over the phone in advance. And then what I try to do is, if I am aware, and certainly I should be, and as we all should be, if I'm aware of a smaller space across the street from my property in the public center, I'm happy to share with that person on the phone that leasing agent's name and number. Remember, the higher the occupancy in the submarket, the higher rates you can charge, right? So a rising tide lifts all boats. So always make sure that you're asking the right questions and you're matching their needs with what you have to provide. Sales is not, how can I twist their arm and sell them something that they're not looking for? That might have been the way it was, in the Mad Men era of the 60s. That's not the way it is in 2020. Chapter 38, never waste a showing. So as I've spoken before, I love back-to-back showings. There's nothing I enjoy more than to have a showing at 3 o'clock and then have another showing at 3:30. Because for sure, the 3 o'clock shows up at 3:10, the 3:30 shows up at 3:20, and I've got 2 different groups of people looking at the space. Nothing screams low supply and high demand better than that. Because we all know that even if we said someone else is looking, the prospect's not going to believe us. So having this literally be in their face is a beautiful thing. But also making sure that before every showing, You review your notes from the call, review your prospects' answers. Maybe when you were on the phone and you wrote down answers, it might mean something differently to you today. Maybe between the time you had the call and the time of the showing. Maybe if they're a burger restaurant, you happen to find out that the other restaurant opportunity that was vacant and available in your submarket got leased. And so maybe something has happened in the market that's changed. Maybe a burger restaurant across the street has now vacated and now you have competition where maybe before you didn't. So reviewing market information, I think it's a really good idea that if you haven't been in your market, the day that you showed the space, drive the competitive projects, maybe with the mindset of, okay, I'm meeting a burger restaurant today. Where else are they going to be looking? Not to throw it in their face in the meeting, but just to have it intellectually and having an understanding of, okay, they're comparing my space to the space across the street that used to be a BurgerFi. I am not a believer, never have been, never will be, to script responses. I despise them. I think that people that rely on script responses will miss out on a lot. I think the prospects also hate script responses, so I don't like that at all, which is why I believe so much in role playing. If any of you guys have ever been on any of my my rookie boot camps or my leasing agent forum meetings and calls, I love to do role playing. So just maybe role play a couple scenarios. If you think that your rent is higher than what your prospect wants to pay, role play with a peer before you go to the meeting, preparation. Quantify value, really break down the financials and the numbers, know your bottom line. Remind yourself what you told them the rent was. Do some calculations on some monthly numbers, etc. If the prospect has other locations, for sure, go visit those other locations prior to the showings. I remember once I had a guy that wanted to come see space, and we had a showing booked for, I think, Thursday, and on Tuesday I went to see his other location. He said he was a pet store. And as I'm driving up to his other location, it's about 6,000 square feet. Who wouldn't want a 6,000 square foot pet store, right? And as I'm pulling up into the parking lot, it's an unanchored center. He takes up like 30% of it. He's got about 100 feet of frontage in glass windows, and strewn across the windows is a huge, huge banner that says, "We buy rats." We buy rats. I'm like, oh my God, I am not leasing to this guy. So the majority of the pets that he sold were snakes. Gross. So very, very important to go check out the other locations. If the property and the space, let's say the space you're showing has been vacant, make sure that you get there early and, take a broom and sweep out maybe some leaves or some bugs. We have in our vacant spaces bleach or antifreeze to put down the toilet to flush it, so that if there's any funky odors, you can kind of clear that up before the tenant shows up, the prospect. I open up the front door and the back door. I turn on all the lights if I can. If it's in the summer, turn on the air conditioning. If it's in the winter, turn on the heat. Make sure you have a large flashlight, not just the flashlight on your phone. We recently purchased the little square footage, width and dimension tool where you can measure in case they have questions about that. I know you can also count ceiling tiles, but sometimes if there aren't ceiling tiles in the space, that's hard. And then lastly, of course, is to bring your listening ears. Listen to the things they're saying and not saying. Remember, the more objections, the better. The more objections, the better. We'll get into that a lot later. So, hope you enjoyed today's podcast of chapters 37 and 38 of the Retail Leasing Playbook. If you did, I'd love for you to share this with your friends, push the like button, and if you want, leave a recommendation so other people can learn as well. The more successful we all are, the more space we lease, the higher the rents are. All right, guys, ciao. Have a great week, rock stars.